If you please rise to honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Here.
Mr. Leary?
Here.
Ms. Martin?
Here.
Mayor Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Here.
Ms. Scott?
Here.
Mr. Conway?
Here.
7 present.
Thank you. We have under the special order of business, first is the introduction of David Robinson, Lowell High School Student Support Service Coordinator. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's become our custom for district-wide administrators to come forward, and so I'd like to introduce Mr. David Robinson. David is our coordinator of student support services at Lowell High School. He's been a guidance counselor with us for a number of years, and I welcome David to the meeting. I don't know if you want to say something. Please so.
Hi. I just want to thank personally each and every one of you for supporting this position to be reinstated. It was a position that was drastically missed during the 4 years that it wasn't here. And I know that without each and every one of you and all of your support for seeing the benefits it can provide, it wouldn't have been reinstated. So, I really can't thank you enough for seeing the benefits of that and for voting unanimously to reinstate. I know maybe some people out there are still wondering, is it justified of putting it back? But I can tell you that I look forward to spending the year every single day proving that you made the right call and justifying exactly that this position is needed. And I look forward to working with all of you this year. So, thank you.
Next, we have the introduction of Mr. William Silver, Director of Information, Communications, and Technology Services. Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to welcome Bill Silver to Lowell. He is our new ICTS coordinator, and I'd like him to come forward. Welcome, Bill, to Lowell.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just wanted to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm really excited to be here in Lowell, and I think it's great the resources that you're putting into the area of technology and education. And we're going to do some great things. And I'm really looking forward to getting into this and getting that project started. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and welcome. And next, we have the introduction of John Overton, District Webmaster.
Yes, John Overton is the webmaster for the city, and we're waiting to get the purchase through, and John has some already great ideas. He's shown us some mock-ups and whatnot, and we're excited about how we can improve our communication systems. So John, welcome.
Thank you. Next, we have the introduction of Elizabeth McKiernan, the Adult Education Director.
Yes, we have a new, the second in the history of Lowell, I believe. No pressure, Betty. And I know you're Betty, so I'm going to refer to you as Elizabeth McKiernan has come to us. She's the new Adult Education Director. She has a good deal of experience in that area, known by all the staff, and I'm sure we'll have a wonderful transition into a fabulous position, so we welcome you, Betty.
Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your support. I, too, am very much looking forward to my role taking over as the director of Lowell Adult Education. I've been associated with them in many different capacities over the last 25 years, and I know there are big shoes to fill with Fred Abbase's leaving. He's the founder of the program, but with an incredible staff in place, I look forward to continuing to provide adult basic education services to all the residents of Lowell in need of basic education skills, English language skills, or completing a GED. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, under special order of business, we have a spotlight on excellence for the food service program presentation. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, I'd like to present Ms. Sharon Lagasse, who is in charge of our food service program. If she'd come forward, Sharon has a short presentation, and I know you can find copies on your desk, and she will go forward. Thank you, Sharon.
Hi, my name is Sharon Legassi. I'm with Aramark and proud to represent the Food and Nutrition Department for Lowell Public Schools. I did leave copies in case I have some technical difficulties with the PowerPoint presentation, so you can follow along. Our team is made up of Rachel Rossi, who's our Assistant Food Service Director. Karen Perrone is our Office and Finance Manager. Diana Ferreira is a new position who is in charge of the Free and Reduced Administration Assistant, who processes all the free and reduced applications. And myself is the Food Service Director. It's an honor to represent Lowell Public Schools. A couple of areas we wanted to touch upon was the free and reduced meal application. We are proud to be able to report for 2 years in a row, we're able to avail to online applications for free and reduced meal benefits. It's safe, secure, private, and convenient. The school lunch app link brings you directly to the application, included with directions. And then we also have posted on the Lowell Public School website another meal sense.org /LPS website that has very friendly directions and all the information that is associated with the free and reduced application process, including contact information to reach out to me or anybody on my team if they have any questions or concerns. It's quick, simple, and smart. Additional options for applying for benefits is the scanned option. We did send out scanned applications to every school with directions at the start of school so that schools could distribute those. We also delivered by mail to all the kindergarten kids prior to them arriving at schools so that they could start the process easier. Food Nutrition will be sending letters to all the families indicating the status of their meals, regardless if they are free, reduced, or directly certified. Actually, 6,000 letters were delivered to schools yesterday indicating what the status of those students are. Flyers have been sent to the community, food banks, shelters, food pantries, homeless and refugee liaisons. We're also requesting to participate in any back-to-school events that are being held at any schools so that we can meet with parents, help with schools and families, fill out the free and reduced application, and also to review any of the new regulations for the new school pattern, meal pattern. So far, we're scheduled for 6 open houses. We created an advertisement that was on the Lowell Sun for 3 Sundays prior to the start of school. We placed it in color, so it was pretty prominent, very easy to follow. We gave the instructions. You go on, you click, you pick Massachusetts, Lowell Public Schools, and then you can fill in all the necessary information. The online application is much more user-friendly than the paper scanned application. Year to date, right now we're running at 2,000 online applications compared to last year. We were around about 900. So we're seeing an increase year over year on the online application process. I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about the overview of the final rule changes, and this has to do with the new regs that are coming out from the government that will affect all meal patterns and menus that we are producing and serving to the students in Lowell. So it's school nutrition catches up with science. In 1997 was the last update to the nutritional standards, which was 15 years ago. On December 13, 2010, the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act was implemented. And on July 1st, 2012, the final rule went into effect. Part of the final rule is 72 provisions that will directly impact the meals that we serve. This will take place over a 3-year period. 1 in 3 children are at risk for preventable diseases due to excess weight. 16 million children are living in households that are experiencing food insecurity. Change is needed to combat childhood obesity by providing and teaching children about healthy food, since nearly 1 in 3 children are at risk for preventable diseases. Many regulations and policies governing the Food and Nutrition Department are based on science and designed to ensure that meals contribute to the health and long-term good eating habits of our students. Simply put, students came to school and ate to learn. Today, they come to school and learn to eat. Highlights of the new regulations: everything went into effect July 1st, 2012. There are grade groups for lunches are K to 8, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. Provisions have been made to adjust for school systems that have different age groups, grade groups such as Lowell. Fruits and vegetables used to be combined into one category. They have been now separated. Flavored milks can only be fat-free, and unflavored can be 1% or fat-free. Half of grains must be served whole grain rich for lunch. We were compliant with that regulation as of last year. The highlights of the new regulation is that there are daily minimums for every component, including the vegetable subgroup at lunch. Weekly maximums are included for grains, meat alternatives, and calories for lunch. Offer versus serve is the model that we use in Lowell Public Schools, where children were able to choose 3 out of 5. Now they must take a fruit and or a vegetable. Nutrition standards for lunch in 2002 include very, very strict calorie ranges. The biggest message that needs to be conveyed to students is, regardless if they are paid, free to reduce, they must take a fruit or a vegetable in order to have a reimbursable meal. Universal breakfast is one of the highlights of the things that we're working on right now. This year, we were awarded 3 additional elementary schools that have been approved for universal breakfast in 2012, 2013. Those are Pawtucket, Riley, and the Rogers. Effective this school year, every elementary student in Lowell Public School is eligible for free and reduced breakfast. That's a huge win. 9 breakfast in the classrooms this year versus 6 last year. And we have produced flyers to send home, and they're in your packages in the back. That was sent to every parent in elementary school, explaining the importance of breakfast and also the specifics for their school. And I want to thank you for your time, and our goal is to deliver experiences that enrich and nourish the lives of our students. Thank you.
Mr. Leary.
Just to get a excellent presentation, but I think kind of get a feedback from the administration. What time frame will this actually be online with the new updates to our webpage? I guess really, when is our webpage going to have the updated changes in place? When do we anticipate this? Because I think this information that we're discussing is important, and I think a lot of folks, if they're able to see this meeting, great. If they get it in the mail, they may lose it, but if they can refer to something that's easy, it'd be our webpage. So it's kind of ties into that whole discussion. Thank you.
I'll provide an update at the next meeting on the 15th about the rollout of the district and the school websites. I do believe this information is accessible now through the existing website. It'll just have a different look and feel when the new website comes online. But at the next meeting on the 15th, I'll provide that update for you.
Any further discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So
Thank
voted.
you.
Thank you. Next, we have minutes. Approval of the minutes of the regularly scheduled school committee meeting of Wednesday, August 15th, 2012. Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have permission to enter. Permission to enter for September 5th, 2012. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the University of Massachusetts at Lowell, Songus Industrial History Center for $38,850 to provide curriculum-based programs to students in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 8th, and 11th grades to enrich their content, understanding, and skill development on the American Industrial Revolution. Fundings provided by the school department local budget, field trip admission fees. To Sandra L. Dunning for $15,000 to provide professional development training to Lowell Public Schools administrators, literacy specialists, coaches, and Merkland school staff in the area of writing as aligned to the new Massachusetts curriculum frameworks for English language arts and literacy. Fundings provided by the Merkland School Redesign Plan and local professional development account. To the International Institute for $27,700 to provide for the refugee community liaisons, interpreters who provide school department and schools with bilingual and bicultural assistance to facilitate homeschool connection in the languages of new refugee groups. Funding is provided by the Title III grant. To the Hillcrest Educational Center Incorporated for $75,000 to provide for the out-of-district tuition costs for one student enrolled in receiving services as outlined in their special education IEP, funding provided by the school department budget, special education tuition account. To the Massachusetts General Physicians Organization Incorporated for $10,000 to provide independent educational evaluations and other special needs professional services to an undetermined number of students as requested by the special education department. Funding will be provided by the school department local budget, special education testing account.
Thank you. As I understand it, there's a correction under International Institute.
Yes, the amount listed on the permission to enter was 27.7, but that was a typo. It's actually 24.7. So if you could just amend the, approve the amended amount of 24.7, that'd be appreciated.
Entertain a motion to amend the amount by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Entertain a motion to approve all of these by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have memorials for Dawn Darigo Capone Serafini, the Wayne Middle School paraprofessional. Linda Mary South Johnston, mother of Julie Goslin, Pawtucketville Memorial School teacher. Antonio Rosalo del Valle, brother of Maria Martinez, Special Education Department clerk. And lastly, Alexa Christakos, a graduate of Lowell High School, 2007. If you'd please rise in a moment of silence and darken chambers. May they rest in peace. Next, we have, under unfinished business, mayor's appointment to the members of the newly formed policy subcommittee. The membership is as follows. Ms. Kim Scott will chair the policy subcommittee with Ms. Ross Sikowicz and Mr. Conway as members. If there are no reasonable objections, then I'd entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, seconded by Mr. Conway. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have next steps for safety review. Madam Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At our last meeting, I brought forward a request for a review of safety procedures at Lowell High School. Since then, I have discussed options with many different professionals. I've spoken with the police department, security within Lowell High School, in Mrs. Murphy's office, just connecting with the STARS program, which really have the big picture piece. And, although people are willing to join, recommendations have come my way that perhaps we might want to look outside for external review instead of an internal. And so to enable us to do so, I wanted to come forward to just get the wish of the committee and see if that's something that would be willing to pass this group, and then to look for a request for proposal type of area to look at, even maybe a local company that can do this work. But I have spoken to many people, and that was recommended more than one time by people who sit in high esteem in the city. So I just wanted to bring that forward for discussion and review. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Madam Superintendent, for bringing this forward. However, I do have some concerns with bringing this to an RFP at this time. I think it's appropriate for the committee to forward your report to the Student Support Services Safety Subcommittee for further discussion and recommendations. I think a number of these issues that you name here, I think we can work out on our own rather than contracting with another entity, but I'll make that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report itself? Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much. And I defer to my colleagues too, the sense of timing, do we have a sense of how we could push this forward so that the student, the Student Support Services, when that could schedule a meeting to get this process started? I think we really want to get into this issue as soon as possible. So if we could maybe just lay down an accelerated time frame, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
I agree with Ms. Martin. I think it's paramount that we get on this as soon as possible. What I'm a little confused at is the makeup of that committee, who might be on it, or what type of, what jobs that these individuals actually have, their job description. Do you have any of that? Do you have any of that information at this point?
Mr. Gignac seems to.
Just, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, I'm referring this report to the Student Support Services Subcommittee for further discussion, not a task force.
I understand that, but I just, the superintendent came up with some comments about her suggestions on who might she like to see on that with their job descriptions. That's what I want to hear from the superintendent right now. I just want to have an idea of what direction you might be going in at this point.
Madam
Because
Superintendent.
I think that the mayor has just made a comment to say, is there any more comments on this particular item? And that's why I'm asking the question. Thank you.
Madam Superintendent.
Yes, at the, just to know that Lieutenant Dolan, Jack Dolan, who works with us, has been actively involved. The coordinator of operations at the high school, Dr. Roxanne Howe, I've met with her in the security guards. The police department, I've spoken with Chief LaValle, and he was willing to perhaps add somebody else. I do have a name from a person on STARS from Medford that could in fact work towards that. So those are some of the key people at this particular point internally. And then as the subcommittee discusses, if there's anyone with specific skill sets that may in fact want to be added, we can look into that. But those are the core people, many of whom I've had discussions with. And so those would be at least that initial core group. Of course, the headmaster of the high school of course, is going to be part of the group. But as far as the people whose priority jobs are really working directly with the security guards and whatnot at Lowell High School and the police officers, those
And
are
I
the
would
core
like to
people.
make a recommendation or a suggestion that perhaps we would add maybe the housemasters or at least a representative of the housemasters to be on that, as a possibility. Because, again, they work with the security very closely and with the police, so they probably have a pretty good idea of what they're doing in that area. Thank you, Madam Superintendent, I appreciate it.
Any further discussion on the report? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have motions by Kristen Ross Sikowicz and Kimberly Scott. Request that the superintendent undertake a feasibility study and form a committee to explore the expansion of the exam school model to the middle school level. Requiring no second. Ms. Ross Sikowicz, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we move forward with the establishment of the Innovation School Study Committee, this is a good time to examine the formation of the exam school model at the middle school level, which will serve multiple purposes. An increased rigor model coupled with the existing integrated curriculum will prepare our children well for the honors, advanced placement, and lyceum programming at the high school level. An exam school model will prepare many of our students to excel in the high school lyceum program, which is under-enrolled. As competition for student enrollment increases amongst our private and charter schools, this type of model will provide another option for our families, in essence, as a draw on the students whose parents would typically send their children to private or charter schools for the same type of education. We as a school district need to hold our own by providing more education opportunities to those gifted students in order to be competitive in the education marketplace. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Ms. Scott?
I think Ms. Ross Sikowicz just said just about everything. But yeah, I think this is important to retain families in the Lowell Public Schools, and also to make sure that we're meeting the academic needs of our advanced learners. And as Ms. Ross Sikowicz mentioned, this is a chance for us to be competitive with charter schools opening. And also, we may be able to attract new families into the city with this type of program. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Martin, and then Mr.
Thank
Leary.
you. Could I just ask, I know it's listed here as an exam school model. I'm not sure what you're requesting in terms of what that actually means.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz.
Essentially, it operates as the equivalent of the Latin Lyceum at the high school level, but only at the middle school level.
So would you, I mean, the Lyceum was set up as with a classical focus in terms of Latin, Greek, the classical liberal arts education. Is that what you're looking at, a liberal arts focus, or is there something else that you're looking to be part of that?
Ms. Scott?
You may not have an answer. I mean, I know we're just asking for information.
We are
but-
asking for a feasibility study. There are other issues too about drawing kids out from the individual schools that we'll be discussing during it. But it's really just to open the discussion up. I thought about programs similar to the Boston Latin middle school programs that they operate. There's different, we could gift and talented programs that we could do through the innovation. There's programs in the innovation that they're looping, grades. They're not doing set class levels. So it's really just to open the dialogue. It doesn't have to be that set model. But I would like to look into the exam model in the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Ms. Martin? Good. Mr. Leary, and then Mr. Conway.
Thank you. No, I think it's a good thing to take a look at this point. They could evolve into different things from the loop schedule to different science academies. What I like to do, though, in an effort to kind of minimize all these committees, just put it through the curriculum subcommittee. All these committees we have established already in an effort to minimize the number of committees, as the mayor did at the beginning of the year. That one's already established to look at that. I think it's a good thing to look at and definitely willing to support it and hopefully get some good feedback going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's a good idea to take a look at this. I know that that I think over the years a number of parents have mentioned this as a possibility, and I think which was described by my colleagues that we're in a situation that we have to compete. And we have to compete with a lot of different types or forms of schools that are starting today. And again, it might be something that we look at and perhaps start off as a pilot program. When we look back, when you talk about the languages, the languages were introduced in the middle schools, and then because of budget cuts and so forth, that was eliminated. But it is something to take a look at, and I think it's a good motion, and I congratulate the two authors for putting that on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Kim Scott and Dave Conway to request the superintendent to contact the Massachusetts Association of School Business Officials to perform a complete financial operations review of Lowell Public Schools. No second is needed. Who would like to speak on this? Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just about having a policy audit. It's something that's just good practice that should happen. We haven't had one in, I believe, quite a long time. We've had our financial audit, but we haven't had a process review. We need some insight into how the business office works and where we can pick up, our weaknesses and how we can improve. Also to find out what our strengths are, and we can look into ways that we can make the district more efficient, and to hopefully provide a model budget format from the Mass Association of School Business Officials. Again, it's regularly scheduled. It should be. I don't know if it's 5 years. I don't know what a good time frame is, but I'm recommending at this time that we put it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Conway.
Yes, just very briefly, and I think my colleague explained it quite well. I just want to add that I think it is important that we take a look at this. And, in every other walk of life, we have audits. We have certainly audits in the medical field. We have it in different types of businesses. And I think that anytime we're spending taxpayers' dollars, I think that they certainly want to know that it's done in the most efficient and effective way. And that they're getting the best bang out of their buck. So I think that the whole idea of putting this forward and taking a look at it, and I think it probably will show that there are many strengths that we have, but if there are areas that we have to shore up and improve on, this organization, I'm sure, has a great reputation, and they'll be able to come in and identify those areas that we need to work on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, entertain we've already got a motion, so all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by James Leary and Mayor Patrick Murphy requested the superintendent report on work with the Massachusetts School Building Authority Facilities Subcommittee and Lowell High School to develop a plan which will utilize maximum state funding to update the high school science labs within fiscal year 2013. Mr. Leary.
Thank you. I just appreciate the mayor co-sponsoring this with me. It's an issue that we've worked with already with the science department head and the curriculum director, Dr. Jack, at length. We've also had the Massachusetts Building Authority has already visited Lowell High School. So what we need to do now is really pull together a full port plan on how do we go about updating our science technology. The School Building Authority is spending a significant amount of dollars in the infrastructure of repairing as well as updating and sometimes actually building new buildings in some high schools attached to facilities to update technology. And this is where they're going to be spending most of the building dollars. And having the mayor from the city side working on this so we can work with the city council eventually, I think is a positive. And I also want to give kudos to Robert Gignac, the school committee member, who's also been working on this issue, as well as the science department head, Roger Marino, who's done an excellent job. This is something that's really going to help us as we talk about competition. This is an area, once we update the science labs, no one's going to be able to compete with us. Our facilities are an area where we need to put money into, and I think this motion will help adjust the science issues that we've dealt with for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a great motion. Not too long ago, I was sitting in these science labs that are still at Lowell High School, and they are in dire need of an update. I had the privilege to walk around the facility with the school building authority, and we talked about a number of possibilities with our labs, and I think this is perfect timing, and the high school will truly be grateful for these upgrades. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a motion by James Leary. Request the superintendent report on the feasibility and provide a recommendation on the establishment of an induction program and mentoring for new administrators in the district, similar to the Lowell Teacher Academy for new teachers. Seconded by Mr. Gignac. Mr. Leary.
I think it speaks for itself. It's important that we educate our administrators. It's important that they get professional development on how to do evaluations and how to support teachers. Without that support, we're really not able to provide a full product to children. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the superintendent, do we have anything, I think it's a good idea, but do we have anything in play right now for new administrators?
As you know, that historically we meet on a monthly basis with leadership. So we have all administrators in the district from the schools and the central office come to that once a month piece. But additionally, we do assign mentors in cases where people are new to roles. This year, we have one new principal at the Sullivan School. That principal has been assigned a mentor. Mr. Skinner is the mentor for Miss, she just got married. What's her name? Patton, thank you. It was Perrin a couple of weeks ago, so Perrin got married to Jackie Patton. So that's the case, but we do have a number of new assistant principals. Now, at the last, the summer leadership, which I reported a little bit about in a school opening report, we did have some feedback for the new principals. What did they feel that they needed? They wanted some more collaborative time. So there are a number of new assistant principals, and that's the training ground for our new principals. So we are looking at what, in fact, we can do in that particular area. Lowell, of course, offers phenomenal coursework. We're going to do quite a bit of training with evaluation, supervision evaluation, as well as everything else that comes our way. But we are looking at particularly that case because there are four new assistant principals. So we would be working with them, absolutely, yes.
You know, Madam Superintendent, a suggestion, and I know that when you automatically think of mentors, you're thinking of naturally administrators, mentoring administrators. But I think that what can also be extremely helpful too, and I know it was helpful to me, is to come up with an advisory committee. For example, let's say at the high school you have, housemaster has 70 people that sign in with him or her, and that they can come up with an advisory committee, which I did myself, and I found it to be extremely helpful because they were the eyes and ears. They let you know what was going on, what they thought should be improved. And you would also have maybe a department head on that, and you might have a guidance counselor on, one of your guidance counselors. I'm just saying, at least on the high school level. I know that the elementary and the middle school might not obviously have that type of manpower to put together, but I think that the mentoring can be not just from top down, but it can also be from the bottom up too. I think can be extremely helpful. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by Robert Gignac and Jim Leary. Request the superintendent work with the city administration in order to provide recommendations and funding sources for improvements to the facilities at the Martin Athletic Complex in Colley Stadium. No seconds needed. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The meaning of this motion is simply for the superintendent to work with the city administration to improve the facilities at the Martin Colley Stadium complex. We are the ones that do the most wear and tear on those facilities, and I think it's a good time for us to work with the city administration to go after grants and to possibly put some people there, maybe in the summer or during certain times, to keep up the facilities. They are important to our athletes, and it's critical that we join with the city administration in their fights to improve the facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
Just quickly, and talking to Congressman Songas's business manager, Brian Martin, he'd really be a good resource to use here in terms of grant money. I had a brief conversation with him, and he said there's a lot of money in the state grants in terms of actually fixing parks, and this might be something that the city can utilize. Also utilizing maintenance of effort. I think that's important to take a look at, hiring additional people where needed, and you can really charge it back to the school department. As Mr. Martin articulated, I think the Colley Stadium in particular was deeded back to the city with reference of Lowell High School students utilizing that park. So I think this is a good motion, and I think we have a good partner in the city in terms of how we can update it. We just got to make sure we're reaching out to people who have some access to the resources to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conway?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm certainly glad to see a motion like this put forward. I think it's excellent, because I think that when we take a look at our athletic facilities, it's amazing the disrepair that they have fallen into. And the fact is that, I don't think that we necessarily have a preventative maintenance program for it, and I think that's something that has to be looked at, not just in our buildings, but also our other athletic facilities. You take a look at that sound system that we have at the stadium, that has been a problem now for quite a while, and I think it's finally going to be addressed. We've talked about, I don't know how many times, about the track. Is causing us an issue. Last year in the baseball field at Martin Field, we had bleachers that had to be torn down, and they were condemned. That shouldn't happen. That's embarrassing, to be quite frank with you, because here we have people coming into our city, and it just happened to be one of the better baseball teams that we've had in many years, and they hosted a number of games, and yet people coming in and they're taking a look at our facilities, and it really is a shame. And I'm glad that we're going to be addressing this, and hopefully we, in the future, will be staying on top of it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next motion by James Leary. Request the superintendent report on the feasibility and provide a recommendation on the establishment of an assistant athletic director, lead teacher position for the high school's athletic and physical education department. Seconded by Ms. Rosikwich. Mr. Leary.
Thank you. I think that the key here is you're looking at a program with over 30 sports. You're looking at a phys ed program with motions that deal with realigning the curriculum K through 12. When I'm looking at lead teacher, I'm looking at it as an inexpensive method of really taking an individual and sharing a lead teacher for not only phys ed, but for the athletic department. And we're going to have an athletic subcommittee meeting discussion later this evening. A lot of questions about, should we hire a position back for statistician? Should we hire more coaches back? In a program that's as large as our program, maintaining what we have is important. But in addition, we need to start looking to get outside folks who are not joining our sports programs. We have a good 1/3 of our population that doesn't play any sports, and the question is really why? Do we not offer enough need for these students, whether we should add other programs or intramurals? I think that's one of the reasons why people would attend school, not only the clubs, but if we're reaching out, doing a survey, taking a look at needs, this position can be useful. Prior to the budget cuts, what we had done in the past is we had one athletic director and then one department chair for phys ed. That probably isn't feasible at this point in time, but maybe adding a lead teacher that can do the cross, working with the athletic director, phys ed department chair, might be a way of doing it. It might not be feasible, but just to get an idea as we look at that entire program, with all the motions that we have outstanding, from realigning the curriculum K through 12 to promoting the athletic program, to really trying to grow the program for folks that aren't engaged at this point in time, as well as looking at all the facilities that we have to maintain. I mean, if you think of it, the Lowell High School program alone and the middle schools are bigger than a lot of small colleges' athletic programs. It's almost as big as you think, really, UMass Lowell. It's kind of comparable to that in some ways. In fact, we have a football team, they do not. So in essence, we may not have the great facilities that they have in terms of the Songus Arena, but our program is probably bigger. And I think that's something we need to take a look at, growing and looking out for what students need. If someone wants to play badminton or some unusual sport like we did with crew, I think that's something we might want to entertain. We need to find these areas. This might be a way of doing it. It might not, but I think looking at it is important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Excuse me, Mr. Conway.
Yeah, I'd just like to, as far as taking a look, and I'm going to vote for it tonight, the feasibility, have the superintendent take a look at it with the athletic director and the headmaster and so forth. But, when I look at it, and obviously I think very highly of sports. I think it's extremely important, and I think that people certainly know that I have fought for the athletic program, and I will continue to do that. But also, I look at some of the decisions that have been made. The superintendent has reported just recently that we've had a lot of newcomers come into the city, and that obviously there's monies that have to be spent there. I'd love to see some more reading teachers, to be honest with you. And when we take a look at some of those younger grades, the numbers are quite high. We've talked about that before. So again, I think that there's priorities. The thing that has upset me a bit, and I think Mr. Leary just hit on it, and that is, why are there not more students participating? And we've had athletic subcommittees, and we've talked about it numerous times to promote to promote sports. And I really don't see that happening. I really don't see it. There was one meeting that we came up with a half a dozen ideas on how to promote sports. Go over to the radio stations, go over to the television, let them know what's happening, let them know the good things that are going on. We talked about, Madam Superintendent, you well know, we talked about that letter that newsletter that went out on a weekly basis. We had to fight tooth and nail to make sure that was done. And that's to let the entire public know what is going on. And I think that we have to work on those things too. I think that's extremely important. It certainly was, it happened with the other athletic directors, and I think we need to make sure that it continues with this. So I'm looking forward to the feasibility study, but I'm not sure whether I would be supporting any type of additional manpower in that office at this particular point. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
Well, I definitely appreciate my colleague taking a look and having the interest to see the feasibility. I think when you look at the whole piece of pie, this is one sliver in that whole arsenal. I'm looking at it in terms of student services. I'm also looking at it in terms of how do we provide additional services to students so they stay in high school. I mean, our overall goal is to educate a whole-rounded student. Part of that is to keep them in school, and one of the areas that I know my colleague has articulated in the past is keeping them in school. So what resources are we aligning to meet the students' needs? I agree with the reading teachers and other positions, and I think other motions will be coming up once we start taking a look at the other part of the pie in terms of the class sizes of kindergarten, which are at about 25, even though we've just added 4 different classes. But I think now that we just had an athletic subcommittee meeting, and part of that meeting was to request a review by the superintendent of the overall program where we may need additional coaches, or we may add a statistician back in. Maybe adding a lead teacher as part of that, or part of taking over some of those positions as a cost-effective move might be the way to look at it. Again, I reserve judgment as well. It may not be a feasible or appropriate thing to do, but I think if we're looking at the whole program, this is a larger piece as we look at where do we want to go with it. So I do thank my colleague for his interest in it, and I'm kind of interested myself in terms of what the recommendations would be in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have subcommittees. Personnel Subcommittee, report on the superintendent's 2011-2012 evaluation, and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Wednesday, August 20th, 2012. Ms. Martin?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The Personnel Subcommittee did meet on August 20th. In attendance were myself, Kim Scott, and David Conway, also from Central Office was Superintendent Jean Franco. We did have a singular topic that we were discussing, and it was this committee's evaluation of the superintendent's performance in her first year as superintendent here for the city of Lowell. I think that we discussed in in a lot of different topics. Few key things I'd like to point out from my own evaluation of the superintendent, and then I would certainly encourage my colleagues to share their thoughts and things that they'd like to emphasize as we move forward. Overall, like any other evaluation, this really is an opportunity for this committee to really look at the performance of the superintendent in a big picture way, to be able to see what things have been working very well, where we'd like to see additional focus, where we see areas that need to see some changes. And I think that that's something that this committee has done, excuse me, for many years. We've consistently done an evaluation of the superintendent every year. This was the first year that we employed certainly a very different instrument. It's an instrument that is based on the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education's mandated evaluation instrument, far more tied to specific rubrics. I think, certainly I think more challenging, but I also think far more instructive for the superintendent to be getting this information from the committee as we supervise her work. I do think that this instrument was a move in the right direction. I know that the same format has been employed with our principals and our other district-wide staff, and we are, obviously currently working towards getting it so that it will be implemented across the district for all of our teachers. And I think that it really will give us great information as a district, the same way it gave this committee great information as we were doing our evaluation of the singular person that we have an opportunity to evaluate. I think as we move forward, much like the evaluation process that we're working with now in terms of our teaching staff, I think there are areas that I would like for the Personnel Subcommittee to address over time. I do think that there were some aspects of our previous instrument that I'd like to incorporate in this. We did talk about some of the areas that aren't really included in this, including relationships with the school committee as a specific area. Also, some more specific areas around relationships within the community, those types of activities. It's something that I'd like this committee to be able to think about before we move into our next summative exercise in evaluating the superintendent about a year from now. In that, I think the superintendent also has some ideas that she'd like to see incorporated so that we could get a more comprehensive evaluation. Key things I'd like to share just as one individual having gone through this evaluation process. One of the key things for me, and it's certainly the number one area as you use this instrument, which I really applaud, is the absolute emphasis on curriculum and actually curriculum and instruction. That is the business we are in. It is the most important thing that any superintendent, and in truth, any employee here in Lowell Public Schools, that is what we do. For myself, this was the area where I found the superintendent's performance to truly be exemplary. Her expertise in curriculum was well established before she took this position, and it has only grown in my estimation. So in this first year, I think we really saw the benefit of having a true curriculum person in this role. The only areas that as we move forward, I'm paying particular attention to, and they are the areas that I had indicated as needs improvement. Key one is with our human resources work. I have certainly spoken with the superintendent about this. We've been, discussing some options as we move forward. I'll be bringing them forward to my colleagues in the very near future. But I do think that we need to streamline our HR processes. It is an extremely cumbersome process. I think over time it costs us quality people. And I know that it costs us quality time for the administrators working within the district. The other area that in my evaluation I had submitted as a needs improvement, and this is one where it's not a matter that the superintendent isn't doing this, but it's an area where I think we really need laser-like focus as we move forward, and that is the relationships with families, with all of the stakeholders in our community, and how we're bringing all of that attention and care and concern to bear on the quality of our students' education. We talk all the time about getting parents involved. I look at that and I see it in a broader sense of getting our community more involved so that we all bear a burden of responsibility for the quality of education in our schools, no matter if you have children in the district or not. Again, the fate of our city will rise and fall based on the quality of education here in the city, and I think that we all share the responsibility for ensuring that that's the case. So again, in my mind, I had listed it as a needs improvement, but that really just indicates that I think it's something that needs to have more and more attention as we move forward in this next year. Overall, taking into account all of the evaluator scores, the superintendent did score proficient. That I should say the scoring rubric is set up so that it's an unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, or exemplary. So in her first year, she did achieve a proficient rating overall, and I, for one, have appreciated the work she's done here in our district, and I'm looking forward to moving forward, seeing even more and more improvements. And I would defer to my colleagues if they have anything they'd like to share publicly in terms of their evaluation process.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Leary.
This is like a discussion evaluation. This is the first time we had a chance to really evaluate you, and I think most of what was said by Ms. Martin, but I think the areas that we've had a busy year. There's obviously a lot of areas, some of the terms we had motions on tonight, areas we need to work on, science labs. The kindergarten classes where they're 25, and I guess the first grade classes are still in an area where we may need, additional support mid-year, kind of changing on the fly. And I think one of the areas, unfortunately, where in education, you usually change, school year to school year. What we're going to be having to do is really changing on the fly and adding resources mid-year. For example, the first grade or other areas that might not come up, like the newcomers, changing from one country to the other at a moment's notice. And I think that's an area that you've recognized. It's different from years past, and also importantly, managing as we get additional resources in, managing how we make replacement of staff and where we put that money is very important. We made massive cuts the past 4 years, but as we go forward this year, working with your finance team and your curriculum team, working together. I mean, it's one big pie. We all got to work. Got to make sure we're not taking our own little piece of pie and not sharing it. We got to make sure we're working together. And I think that's something. It's a big challenge for you going ahead this year and the following years. But I'm glad to work with you, and I look forward to more positive stuff this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a very complicated system. We have about 14,000 students with a very large staff, very diverse student population, and it's a very difficult job. I think that everyone certainly would agree to that. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, as we have often talked about before. When I take a look at this evaluation process, I want to first of all commend and thank Connie Martin for helping guide us through this process, because this is new, it's complicated, and I certainly thank you, Madam Superintendent, for clarifying certain aspects of it. And I do want to say that, the areas that, I just want to mention a few areas. There's no sense in going through everything here, but an area that I consider a strength is certainly the personnel, is the curriculum. I think that with curriculum, you certainly have your expertise there. People realize that, people know it. People certainly have said it to me. There's enough of teachers have given me positive feedback in regards to that. I also want to say that I think the staff appreciates the fact, and I know it's very time-consuming, but they appreciate the fact of you going to the schools, visiting the schools. That's extremely important, and I think you realize that that's where the actual work takes place. going into the classrooms and talking to the teachers. And again, they appreciate this, they really do, because they're in there day in and day out, putting out a product that is so very, very important and very precious for the parents and for the community. And overseeing that is extremely important. So those are areas that I think are, as far as I'm concerned, very, very important, and that I think that you certainly do an excellent job in that area. I think one of my colleagues mentioned about partnerships and reaching out. That's something that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's ongoing, it's evolving. You never can sit back and say, we've done enough, we don't have to worry anymore about partnerships. And partnerships is such a broad subject. It's not just what we think of perhaps business partnerships, but it's partnerships going into the community. It's partnerships with the nonprofits, it's partnerships with the college and the university. And I think that's something that we need to continue to work on. An area that once again is one of those areas that no matter what walk of life you're in, there's always a constant, not a complaint, but concern about communication. And I think communication has to be at the forefront, because we have certainly seen in the past that, without communicating, it has caused issues and problems. And I think that that's where we need to firm up. And in that particular area, I gave you proficient, but I think that that's something that we still can work on. The area that I think that certainly needs some looking at is the hiring process, the human resource management area. That's an area that, and I look across, there seems to be some issues with, there are other committee members that have some concerns with it. I want to make sure that, we back a couple years ago, when we had a budget problem, of course it seems as though we have a budget problem every year, but this one was hard hit, and we reorganized. And I certainly understand, we reorganized to try to make things more efficient, effective, and yet do more with less people, and also with less dollars. I think that anytime we make a drastic move, like we did in that particular area, I think that we need to revisit that periodically to find out, was that the best move or not? And I think sometimes when we make a business move, and we see it all the time, you see it with managers in the business world, where they make a move and they realize that maybe perhaps it wasn't the best move, and then they change things around. So that's an area that that is concern for me, and I know that I want to look into it more closely as time goes on, and I will be putting on some motions that will be addressing specific areas in that department. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Any further discussion? Ms. Scott?
Through you to the superintendent. I would like to start, I guess, with your strengths. What I feel is that you've really developed a team in your administration. I think you've worked really hard with that. And I think that you also have made great improvements in the curriculum office by bringing the curriculum directors on board. And obviously that's your strong area in curriculum. That you have also improved instruction. As a parent, your writing in the schools is just incredible. The areas that I had concerns over were more on the management and operation side. Some safety concerns, bullying consistency, policy audit, and they're areas that you're developing. I wouldn't call I put needs improvement, but I would say that you're already underway working on them. There's nothing that gets by you, that's for sure. The policy audit, our fiscal financial reporting, which we've already spoke about,
and the engagement area with parents. That was my only other concern. And I think a lot of that will come with the website when that's up and running, and also making sure that parents are welcome in the schools. So those were my areas of concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start off by saying, Madam Superintendent, I think you've done a great job so far. You and I are new to these roles, and it's been a pleasure working with you. But going through this process, I did come across one indicator that I thought I rated you as needs improvement, and that was with the data-informed decision-making. And I came up with that conclusion simply because of my experiences asking for data from you. Months ago, we discussed the dropout rate at the high school and realized that data that was submitted to the state was incorrect. That's a big piece of data that was not handled appropriately, whether on our side or the state side. However, it's still floating. Our numbers are still on the state website as being very, very high with the dropout rate. Also, just last month, we were promised that we would receive class size information from the high school, and it's now September 5th, and we have yet to receive that. So those are just a few indicators of why I chose to come to that conclusion of needs improvement in that area. However, I do think you're very strong in curriculum. I do think you're very strong in knowing about your staff and the students themselves. I did give you an exemplary in cultural proficiency because as a result of conversations with you, you know about the students of our district. You know about the backgrounds of the families and what they have to go through and where they're coming from. And I've been truly impressed with you in that area. But overall, I do think you're doing a great job, and I hope to see you here for the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gignac. Any further discussion? Ms. Ross-Sikowicz.
I wanted to echo my colleagues' comments with regard to the superintendent's performance. I think overall, you've done an outstanding job, you and your team. And I think in the areas that I had identified as needing improvement, I think these are more institutional issues. It's past practice. It's been in place for a number of years. Like any organization, we can improve. And just being a year into this position, I think you've done an outstanding job, particularly with regard to curriculum. I completed this assessment not just as a school committee member, but also as a parent. So I see that result every single day. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I'd submit that as a report of progress. I'm sorry, and the superintendent would like to respond.
Motion by Ms. Martin to accept as a report of progress, seconded by Ms. Ross-Sikowicz. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed or voted? Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank each of you for your critical feedback. I believe that feedback is a learning experience, and I look upon this evaluation as an important part of next steps, what this committee, who we probably spend way too much time together, thinks of the process and what's going on in the school system. I am devoted to the instructional core. As superintendent of schools, I think the biggest challenge is to stick to that instructional core. What children know and what they're able to do is what this business is all about. And I still believe that it's the American dream. This is what we get up every day for, and I do fight to stay there. So there are other areas that I need to improve, but I'm elated that you think my curriculum background's really strong, because that's what I live and breathe. The talent of our children is phenomenal, and we need to go forward. And as I've said more than one time, I will only be happy when Lowell is a high-performing district, not a high-performing urban district, the highest performing district it can be. And I have faith in my staff, I have faith in my children, I have faith in my families, and the leadership of the group sitting in this chamber this evening. So thank you for this feedback. I will look at it in a strategic way as a team, because my biggest strength are the people around the tables back here. We will look and see, what needs to happen. But thank you very much. I believe that it was a positive process. It was handled extremely professionally on all of your parts, so thank you very much.
And I'm sure she hopes to see some of you around here for the next couple of years. Excuse me? I would entertain a motion to suspend the rules by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. If you just please state your name and address for the record.
All right. My name is Rashid Mabali. I'm at 281 Boylston Street. I guess my question is, since everybody's saying you're proficient and you're going to do great things in Lowell, are you going to make these kids start passing these exams? Because I think as a resident and a parent, I'm concerned at looking at those numbers. So if everybody has a lot of faith in Madam Superintendent, I'm guessing you're the person that's going to change those numbers, right?
The ultimate goal is how we look at growth. So we're looking at the growth data, how children progress. And yes, improving the outcomes on tests like the MCAS, but also what kids learn as we're going through the year is really very important. Every child deserves a minimum of 1 year's growth every single year. And depending on where they are, they sometimes exceed that. It depends. But the focus in Lowell Public Schools is children meeting the outcomes. Do we have work to do to meet the composite index, which they call the average of other communities? Yes, and that's the focus. So we look at data all the time. The goal of the system is to improve those numbers. Yes, that's the focus of the district, and as a member of this community, you have every right in the world to look at that, and if you need more information about that, our curriculum office can provide that information to you gladly. My job is to make our kids the best they can be, and I take that very seriously. So yes, the intention is those numbers will change, sir.
That's good. Can I give you one piece of advice that I observed from looking at the schools? Everybody talks about how it's so diverse. I personally grew up in Uganda, and I see a lot of immigrant kids, and I would think you should look into ESL class for pre-K and kindergarten, because it's tough for a teacher to teach a bunch of kids from all different parts of the world, and I think these kids should be able to at least be proficient in English before they sit down in the classroom with other kids that speak the language. It's not a knock on them from where they're from, but I think it would help the teachers to basically teach grade level as far as ability, as opposed to just putting everybody in the same group, and now the teacher's teaching like 5 different things at the same time. I don't know. I think you guys should look into that as a starting point, because I think we need it in Lowell. I don't know. That's my advice to you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll move on to the Transportation Subcommittee. Report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Thursday, August 23rd, 2012. Mr. Leary.
We had a meeting, the Transportation Subcommittee, all the members on the subcommittee, Committeeman Robert Gignac, Committeewoman Kristen Ross-Sikwich were in attendance, as well as Committeewoman Kim Scott. The entire administration was there, as well as approximately probably 40 parents were in attendance as well, and the topic was really in terms of transportation for the Immaculate School and really the distances as well as safety. As well as the waiting time that the children had to endure for the past few years. The Transportation Director, John Dakota, was also in attendance. He provided a plan where they would switch the school, the Moody School, to the Sullivan School for transportation, as well as adding additional stops to basically before they got to the Sullivan School, carrying the children in the elementary schools as an initial beginning step prior to the school year. Following that, looking at the other part that's is of major importance to the district is looking at the safety. And after looking at that, changes have already been made or actually being made as we speak in terms of students that are going to the Immaculate that are living in the section right now of the, I guess it's the Belvedere and the South Lowell area with the Andover Nesmith crossing, or actually if you're in middle school, you'll be getting a bus. What we're doing now is we're not stopping there. We're looking at every part of the city. And looking at in terms to make sure that we're ensuring that students are safe and that we're in compliance with the law. And we anticipate having an additional update from the Transportation Department before the end of September, how the current changes that we've made already, how they are working. Are they actually working? Are we delivering what we're promising? And second, where do we need to make additional changes? Thus far, it hasn't added any cost to the budget. However, that may change as we roll into looking to make sure that we're updating where buses need to be for students to ensure that they're safe. Right now, I think we got a brief update from Mr. Dakota today. He has taken a look at the bus changes that we've made. We are at the beginning of the school year, so there are changes that still have to be made. And we look forward to a written update of, I guess I'm being redundant at this point, but changes that we've made, make sure they're working, and then for further updates. We're going to have these updates throughout the year, so the issue is far from being over. I do thank Mr. Dakota and the parents for taking the time to come out. I think the initial response is at least going forward positive, and if we deliver what we're promising, then it's going to be an overall, hopefully a satisfying experience and safe experience for the young ones in our city. The report of progress was made by the committeewoman Kristen Ross-Sinkwich, second by Robert Gignac, and approved. And I make that as a motion as a report of progress at this point in time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Any further discussion on the report? All right, then. We'll move on to the Finance Subcommittee report and approval of minutes of the meeting of Thursday, August 23rd, 2012. Mr. Leary.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Finance Subcommittee was in attendance. I was with Committeewoman Connie Martin, Committeewoman Kim Scott, as well as committee members Kristen Ross-Sinkwich and the committee member Robert Gignac. The focus was looking at currently the financial update of the year, but also looking at our annual review of our food service, which we had as a spotlight on excellence today. And I guess I won't go into what we discussed at the beginning of tonight's meeting on our spotlight on excellence, but a big part of our meeting revolved around how the changes in the state and the federal mandates are going to affect your child's menu and your child's selection choices. And I think the importance expressed at that meeting by all the members were really to make sure this information gets out to the public, because there's going to be obviously a lot of questions in terms of why are we switching to these types of foods, why are we required, for example, forced to eat a vegetable, as it were, at school lunch. That's part of the discussion. It was a lengthy discussion in terms of those federal mandates. We're going to have that on the website as we update the website. I believe it's already on now, but once we have our new updated website any day now, you should be able to read it much easier, much more efficiently. We also discussed in terms of the financial breakout of how we're doing as a system, as a food service system. I think when we started working with RMARC a couple of years ago, the food service department was approximately, rounded numbers, $700,000 in the red, in the deficit. As of this year, as of the end of last year, we're actually $406,000 in the black in profit. So at least from a financial standpoint, we're making some progress. We did discuss areas where we need to make improvement, and we want to continue to have a dialogue with RMARC. Some of the positive highlights that RMARC is working with our staff in terms of training. After reviewing all the training that our head cooks go through with RMAC, from safety, not only meal menu preparation, but also safety discussions and how to reduce workers' compensation injuries. I think our staff needs to be commended, especially our cooks, in terms of all the efforts that they're putting out, not only serving a high-quality food product and doing it and working with our educators to provide a good educational experience to our children, but also working to minimize costs in other areas besides just food. Example, safety. They have weekly, Friday afternoon telephone conferences discussing workers' compensation losses, or how do we prevent losses from occurring, and looking at actual injuries that they may have had in other schools and working out how do we prevent these. And working in the insurance industry, this is significant. This is one of the most effective ways of reducing exposure and keeping employees that you value safe. So I give a lot of kudos to our senior, I guess it's our head cooks, who are really, leaders in this area and are providing, a positive workers' comp experience for the school system, which saves dollars we can spend on the children. We did have a discussion for the food service as it pertains to the policy on the children who, I guess I'm going to get this incorrect, the policy in terms of children who are not paying for the lunches and how the deficits are being rolled over. And because at the time frame at the meeting, we had to roll that over to another subcommittee, which we'll be discussing at the second meeting in September, a recommendation from the administration on a policy and how to correct that and to work with that to ensure that we're doing it in a positive fashion. So I won't get into it specifically tonight unless a committee member wants to discuss it at this point. We also looked at this point regarding the other parts of our financial part. We had a discussion regarding the race to the top money and how we're spending that money and how that's utilized in professional development, how it's utilized in developing our teachers to help reach our test scores and help educating our students, as the gentleman articulated. How are we going to do that? Well, through aggressive professional development with our people. In addition, we discussed some of the programs we're using at the high school. For example, Repeat folks are using online learning. Part of some of the motions that we had in the past years, online learning is being paid for by the Race to the Top grant. So we had a lengthy discussion as it relates to online learning. The other part we discussed at the point is the end-year results. Where are we doing financially? And as the Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Lang, articulated, right now we have a rounded number, $3 million that's actually in the suspense account. Of that, about $1.5 million has been budgeted for salary increases, and the other half has been budgeted as just as suspense. What the committee discussed at that point is really where are the areas that, as a whole, as the school system works throughout this year, where do we need to make adjustments in terms of equipment, in terms of staffing, et cetera. So what we requested of the administration is to come back in the next couple weeks with recommendations as to what types of equipment do we need. Be it library books. Do we need to have, as we talked about earlier, reading teachers to work in certain classes where perhaps kindergarten or first grade where we still have large class sizes, perhaps a co-teacher or some other type of fix that will actually address our concerns. So we're waiting, hopefully by the second meeting in September, we'll have recommendations from the administration as to where we need to have fixes. The idea, though, is really to look at one-term spending, whether it be updating library books. One example is going into the Stocklosa Middle School. If you look at their library, because of the deficits that we've had, it's really, the library is in serious need of an update in the catalog. Working in terms of some of the cuts we had with librarians. Again, adding staff is a concern, but looking at maybe we need to add some of that to update some of the library catalogs. Again, we're looking for recommendations from the administration so we can make plans as a school committee in terms of where our greatest needs are. At that point, getting a dry mouth. There's no water here, Mr. Mayor, so we should get that next time. At that point, we had a report of progress made by Committeewoman Kim Scott and second by myself, and it was unanimously passed. There was another issue that I did forget that's equally important. Committee member Kim Scott articulated some of the areas where we should be making changes in terms of how we are running our financial operation. One of the areas is getting out a monthly report to members in terms of, similar to what the City Council does, an actual update. So every member will see online in their packet monthly where we are as of that particular month. In addition, what we'll be doing is we have pre-scheduled financial subcommittee meetings every quarter, and we'll be doing that live right before our regular scheduled meeting. So I think the next meeting is going to be in October. I don't have the date. It'll be the second meeting in October. We'll be having an updated financial meeting going over where we are at that particular quarter and so forth. So we'll have definitely 3 scheduled subcommittee meetings each quarter going over where we're at, where we need to plan for the future. I anticipate additional subcommittee meetings as we come to the budget, but at least as we go out throughout the year, members can have an opportunity to ask the administration questions and make some additional changes where needs may be. And that's, Mayor, is a report in progress. Thank you.
Thank you. We could get more water, but of course, there's always the option of speaking less. Is there any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept as a report of progress by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the Athletics Subcommittee report and approval of the minutes of the meeting of Monday, August 27, 2012. Mr. Gignac.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will keep this brief.
Thank you.
Just for your pleasure. The Athletics Subcommittee met Monday, August 27th. Present were myself, Mr. Conway, and Mr. Leary. Also, Superintendent Franco, Mr. Lang, Mr. Rosmerick, and Mr. DeProfio. There are a few motions that came out of this subcommittee meeting, just to let you know in advance. At first, we discussed a proposal for a documentary on legendary wrestling coach George Bossy of Lowell High School. A parent group has formed that are interested in doing a documentary on Coach Bossy and his career as wrestling coach of Lowell High School. This group is not requesting any funding from the district, but would just like to put together a film in regards to his career. And just from my point of view, I did wrestle under Coach Bossy for a short period of time. And he's not only legendary in Lowell, but he is legendary as a coach throughout New England. A motion was made by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Conway, to recommend approval of the documentary to the full school committee meeting this evening, and request the superintendent to work with the parent group and the athletic director to provide necessary legal permission. So I will bring that motion forward.
Motion to approve by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gignac?
Next, we spoke about a proposal the subcommittee received from former statistician Bob Bam. Mr. Bam was a statistician for a number of years. His position through budget cuts was cut. Mr. Bam provided the subcommittee, along with the athletic director and the superintendent, a proposal on bringing back his position. Much conversation was had at this meeting regarding his role and the role of the statistician. A motion was made by Mr. Conway and second by Mr. Leary to request the superintendent look at the statistician position along with all of the coaching positions that have been cut over the past few years, and to provide a report to the full school committee meeting at September 19th meeting. I'll put that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Any discussion on the motion? Ms. Martin?
Just to clarify, so we're basically just asking for information at this point?
Yep.
Regarding this position and any assistant? Okay.
Absolutely.
I take a roll call on that, or would you?
Sure.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted.
Thank you. Lastly, we discussed a draft report on the athletic facilities. The athletic director provided the subcommittee with a report on all of the athletic facilities. We did speak about this briefly. We spoke about this a number of times between athletic subcommittees and facility subcommittee meetings. In a subsequent meeting of the athletic subcommittee or a joint athletic and city council subcommittee meeting will be scheduled in the fall to further review the current facilities. I put that as a report of progress.
Motion is to accept as a report of progress by Mr. Gignac, second by Ms. Scott. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Lastly, we have the Finance Subcommittee report of the meeting of Wednesday, September 5th, 2012. Mr. Leary.
Just quickly, we made recommendations to the administration will be forthcoming at our second meeting in September with recommendations for a policy with the food service. And I guess that's a report of progress, Your Honor.
Motion by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the reports of the superintendent, school opening report. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your packet, you have a report, just a synopsis of the activities that have occurred within the last 2 weeks. Just to let everybody know, we did welcome back all of our leaders the 14th, 15th, and 16th of August, where we did have a focus on each particular day on each goal of the school system. So first day was on communication, oversight, and shared leadership, where we looked at supervision, evaluation, goal setting, and shared leadership as across the system. The second day was response to instruction, so we looked on the instruction needs of our kids. We looked at the initiatives in curriculum, data across the system, so that was the focus on the second day of the training. Day 3, we really looked at the third district goal, which is narrowing the achievement and growth gap for high-needs student populations, where we looked at the tier systems of support. Massachusetts has done a good deal of work, most current work, looking across the curriculum on children's curriculum needs, but also their home needs. And so educating the whole child. We had a very interesting guest speaker, internationally known, George Sagai, who talked about tying systems of support around young people, that instruction is one piece, but it goes with the whole family connection. And so that was what we accomplished as an entire leadership team. That's all high school staff, K through 8, central office staff, receiving that same message. So that was the beginning of our kickoff. I did create a video, if anybody wants one, to all of our teachers talking about the initiatives of extreme importance. That was shown in every school building. It was the first activity as we went across the district, so talking about what was coming. There are many new initiatives. I've been keeping you informed of the issues with changes in legislation, Department of Justice changes with the instruction of English language learners. There's quite a good deal of information about the education evaluation system that I shared with my staff, so everybody could get that clear message from me as superintendent. The newsletter went out to everybody so they could get that in writing. We have some courses that have been offered to our students. We are going to be a pilot system for the new retail course. That the Department of Education offered that just probably a week ago, but it's part of the fact that Lowell will be a place where we will pilot the new program for instructing English language learners with our own staff, and they will in fact give feedback to the course that's coming out. And this will be the recertification for all children who teach English as a second language across the state within the next, I think the completion date has to be 2016. For new certification round. Very interesting times we are in. We all visited a school on orientation day. I went to 7 where there was a new leader, whether it be a principal, assistant principal, or Mr. Robinson. So we went to all of the schools where there was new leadership. So we all took a road trip on the day before school began. We sent a Connect Ed message just reminding everybody that here we are, we're back, and it's exciting time because our children were coming back to us. I welcomed the food service workers just to welcome them back to the district. As you know, Ms. Lagasse is very detailed. She tells, she goes by the book, and she wanted to let people know the changes, but just that outreach to the school food service people is something that I put on my agenda. I did send a letter of appreciation to the clerical, custodial staff. The schools were beautiful, and I don't know if you're enjoying going to them, but I have to say, for all of we had summer school for 2,000 children, and our schools were phenomenal, and some of them they had kids till 3 weeks before, really did a nice job. So I have to commend Brian Curley and his whole department who did a phenomenal job, as well as our clerical staff who were ready to go. We have 75 new teachers to date. So I welcomed all the new teachers in the Lowell Teacher Academy and welcomed them to Lowell and told them what an amazing choice they made to teach in our city and how we would support them in induction for the next 3 years. And then our children came. So we were ready. We have about 90 students upstairs in the Rogers School, and we have all kinds of fun things that are going on. So we're back in business and happy to be that way. So I just wanted to let you all know what was going on.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Move to approve by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Ross Sikowicz. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the academic competition for surrounding school districts. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This summer, I met with the Lowell Sun editor, Jim Campanini, and when we were speaking, Mr. Campanini talked about why we don't promote more public relation pieces academically in our schools. And so when Jim did say we should do something like the Knowledge Bowl, he has attended our Knowledge Bowl in past years, and he really thinks it's a wonderful competition. He said, why don't we do that in other districts, the surrounding districts? And I said, you want to help us fund it? And he said yes. So that was the initial conversation. I have invited all of our neighboring districts. We have responses. We're meeting actually this week or next week, the 13th, and just to kind of look at what each one has, because everybody has something they're proud of. So Westford, Drakeford, Brobrook, all around this area, Tingsboro, will be coming, and thus far I think we have responses from 5 different systems. So we're going to look at our Knowledge Bowl, adding to that, and so after our Knowledge Bowl is over, we'll have a kind of a city team that we will look at. So we might take somebody from each middle school, but it was something that we talked about. So that's what we're going to go forward. I just want to make you aware of that, keep you posted as it evolves, how it comes into reality.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Mass Tells report and summary. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, over the last, I think it's 5 years, there has been a system of survey, Mass Tells. Mass Tells looks at employees' approval of many different areas, and so it was run by the Rennie Center for Research, and just to look at what our teachers, our administrators believe in their school systems. So what I presented here for you is how Lowell responded in comparison to the state. I did include information that Mass Tells is a public survey, so you can search the website if you want to look at more information about individual schools. But as we looked at this particular data, I would like everybody to know that it was part of the final evaluation of principals. We studied TELS data. We looked at culture pieces. That's under that first goal of shared leadership. What, in fact, are the attitudinal thoughts in your system? And how are you communicating as teams? And so we did look at that. So if you look at, I won't go through every single entity of this, but if you look at the pages in the key findings, we see that our class size was in some cases not as adequate as parts of the state, so that was something that our staff was looking at, class size in certain areas. When we looked at facilities of technology, and thus the great emphasis that this committee has put on technology, that we had about 37% of our staff that thought it was adequate, where the state was saying 63. So that focal point is very important. Community involvement, where the state had a higher ratio than the city as far as how our community support and involvement was indicated by our teaching staff and our staff in buildings. As you look at student conflict and what's going on in schools, we are almost the same as the state, that we had 62% of our teachers felt that managing student conduct was at that high level, and 69 in the state. Teacher leadership, which that being one of our goals, that we're a little bit lower than the state as far as our feelings internally about how teacher leadership was approached. We were higher than the state in the areas of professional development and how the quality of professional development. We got comments on the support of English language learners and how we support those initiatives in a way that our staff across the system felt was higher than the state results. Instructional practice. Our teachers responded that we thought we had autonomy to make instructional decisions. It was a little bit lower than the state in the instructional decisions. Overall, our 78% of our teachers think that our schools and our staff are great places to work and to learn. There are more details in this particular survey, but I just wanted to give you the overall synopsis in comparison. But we do have, in the areas that this committee's focused on, which is looking at technology specifically, that was one of the areas where we needed to do the much work out of all of them if we look in general. So I welcome any questions you may have of the information that was provided. And as I said, if there's any particular information, this is public information. It is on the Mass Department of Education website, as well as I have the link here, www.telmass.org, and we can put that on our website if we want to have it as a link for people to look at.
Thank you. Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the superintendent. On page 3, I just want to go back to that for a minute. I think it's the second, where it says teacher leadership, and where it says, question 6.5, teachers have an appropriate level of influence and decision-making in this school. Lowell did respond 5.6 percentage points lower than the state average. That I was a little surprised to see, to be quite frank with you, because I think that, the direction that I think we've been going is kind of empowering the teachers so that it's not top down. And that right there, that was a little red flag to me. And the other one that kind of reinforced it a bit is towards the end where it says instructional practices and support, question 9.1D. However, teachers' autonomy, as you just mentioned, to make instructional decisions was rated lower than the state. 59.2% versus 72.1% from the state. Is there any, what's the significance on that, Madam Superintendent? Why are those numbers, again, I thought to be quite frank with you, I was looking for numbers that would actually be higher than the state. And I mean, again, a lot of the numbers in different categories certainly equal the state and perhaps a little bit better. But those two areas kind of concern me. Is there any explanation for something like that? Any suggestions or?
Except for the fact that you want to look for more information, I must say that there are quite a few curriculum demands, and in the times of adapting to Common Core standards, our curriculum's changing, so we do put up new mandates. And so since we have to make sure we're ready for that new assessment this spring, part of it, and next year, there have been initiatives in the curriculum office that people might say we have to follow more of a guiding curriculum, and we don't have as much autonomy. So I think that could be part of it, Mr. Conway, but I would...
But Madam Superintendent, everybody in the state's running into the same situation. So, I mean, we're all in the same pot. And that's why I was a little, I mean, that's something that would concern me as superintendent, and probably I would take a look at that and find out why they don't feel that they have, they don't have that type of input. The other point on page 5, community support and involvement. There seem to be some areas there, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's some work that needs to be done with that area. And I think that probably goes back to what we talked about earlier, Madam Superintendent, about partnerships, the constant drumbeat to try to improve in those areas. Because I look at some of these numbers here, and they are, again, I'm not going to go through the specifics on them, but there are certainly some concerns that I think need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leary?
And I think, Madam Superintendent, a good action plan that you just have already presented is sitting down when you evaluated each and every one of our principals this summer and use the TELS report as part of that review. I think that's important. It shows true leadership on your part, because I think our leadership needs to know that having a good community, as opposed to one person driving the system, is imperative. And I think at least your initial action as you reviewed everybody is a good start, and I appreciate that, and I think it was a good move. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept this report of progress by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Ms. Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have textbook purchases. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a total of all of the textbooks that were purchased this particular summer. Just so you know, the total figure was $489,365.73. And so it's updating all the core materials that we need to do in mathematics. Those are consumable type things. Our grade book, our assessments for knowing the academic level of literacy for each one of our children. And then there are other things that were added. Either they're replacement type of materials, or they are materials to upgrade or update what we're doing. A number of them are replaceable assessments as well as core instruction. And you will also see at the bottom of the list what outfitting our new kindergartens cost, just so you know.
Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Conway?
Yeah, just a quick question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the superintendent. The vendors, who picks the vendors? How is that done now?
The process of choosing vendors has a pretty collaborative piece. If we're picking a new textbook, we invite teachers from a particular grade level. The most current one was a social studies 8th grade, where we brought in a teacher, at least one representative from every school, and probably the instructional coach, and they came together, they reviewed those particular books, they looked at what they needed, the technology that went along with them, so that's how we really review the books that we hold. And you will know, as a matter of fact, Mrs. Abrams would be able to tell you right now, as I could before her, what our next adoption will be. So you look at the information, you look at if your curriculum changes or shifts, and then in fact what has to be added. So it's pretty collaborative. Lowell actually for many years has been pretty collaborative in choosing textbooks. Before I became superintendent, I was involved in many adoption committees. So there has been a long history of that, and you always get input from the teachers and different levels of the organization.
So is it the building principal that makes the final decisions on these vendors? Is it you, or who does this?
The district maintains a core curriculum across the city because, of course, of the transiency and whatnot. So, for instance, when any one of these, and I'll even just use the language, that's a text, a core text for special education students that was chosen by special educators, mainstream teachers, and people who are involved in teaching the children, whether they be administrative. So there's kind of a selection committee, and that's always been the history. Actually, I was really pretty impressed with that when I came to Lowell. There was also adoption committees, and so then when something happens, the teachers will start saying, we will know from the curriculum offices, there are pieces missing now because the curriculum has changed, so either you add an additional unit, or you have to sometimes adopt a new textbook, depending. So that's how it's been done historically, and that's how it continues.
Okay, so I think that I have this clear at this point. So the teachers and the staff are the ones that actually pick the vendors. They're the ones that do that. Okay, thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Next, we have the quarterly report on outstanding motions. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am presenting to you all the quarterly report of motions. We have highlighted the motions that we believe have been completed. I welcome your review or comments if you think that more needs to be done before any of these highlighted motions are in fact removed from the list, and I welcome your input.
Any discussion on the report? Mr. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to go over a few of these, Madam Superintendent, through you, Mr. Mayor. The book signing, and I think that's one that we talked about, that it's past the point, and was too bad, because I think that would have been great to bring one of our very own back to, to show our students what success can be like. And it's a shame that we missed that opportunity. Perhaps the next time he writes a book, we'll get it done correctly. The Lowell High School time change, it said sent to Ed on 4/19 for the report. What's the, that's by myself and Mr. Leary, what's the result of that? I mean, I know it's sent to Ed, but what happened?
There was not a recommendation for a change, but I actually should have changed the language on that one, thank you. But I asked if there was, in fact, so we did not change the time, and I wanted to see if that was something that was possible, and at this particular time, it's out of character, but I will ask the headmaster to report.
So we
on
felt
that.
the change, there was no need for a change, to keep it where it is.
Yes.
All right. The next one I have on here, sports-themed schools. Madam Superintendent, that was very dear to my heart. I was very excited when I put that motion on. I really was. I read it a number of different times to myself and couldn't wait to bring it to the floor. And we get the 4 votes, and it's ongoing. I mean, that's ongoing since 6/15/11. Can you give me an update on that and what has actually happened? I mean, I don't see anything happening on it.
The only thing that's happening at this particular time is that I know that in looking at the innovation schools, they were looking at this motion towards that innovation school, but as far as it going into any schools, it has not gone any further, Mr. Coleman.
When is it going to go further?
As soon as possible, I'll look at it for the next meeting.
Thank you. On page 4, the GIC requested the superintendent work with the city officials to determine exact amount of savings afforded by the city by the conversion of the school department employees from their current health insurance plan to the GIC. There were a number of quotes thrown around prior to this change, and yet I haven't come up with there hasn't been a final bottom line figure on how much money was actually saved. Do we have any idea? I mean, not that, believe me, I know it's not, you're not the one coming up with it specifically, I understand that, but when do you think the city officials will have that information for us? Do you have any idea at all?
I'm going to ask Mr. Lang to report. I'm not quite sure.
Thank you.
We won't know the actual savings until the end of the full fiscal year when we pay into the GIC, but we'll have projected savings, I would say, after the first quarter, because we've only paid into the GIC for July and August, 2 months at this point. I would say give it another month by the end of September. All of our school staff, their first payroll is this week. So all of your updated staff are now in the system. They've all selected their health plans. We can start to run reports on active school department employees and which plans they've selected and what the costs are going to be. The other 3 factors are on the city side. You've got city active employees, you've got city retirees, and the city also pays the health insurance benefits for the school department retirees. So really there's 3 different numbers we've got to get from the city side. I would say you'd have a good projection, at least at the end of the first quarter. If you want, I can add that to the second meeting in October when we do the financial update.
That would be great, because again, the numbers from the city manager, when he came out with it, he was quick to come out with specific numbers that it would save. And, and that's what, I think that's what we were probably expecting. And then, and I understand, I'm sure it's pretty complicated, but if we could, if we can get a bottom line figure at least, well, I shouldn't say a bottom line, but if we can get a rough idea, I really appreciate that. The other, on page 5, The one on the salary discrepancies, that's still, we're still working on that one, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. The one on here, civic involvement and curriculum, you know, there was a report that came out, Madam Superintendent, a report that came out, and, you know, and it was an excellent report, it really was. But I think the whole idea of this particular motion was the fact that what we were doing really didn't stimulate, I think, people to get involved with, you know, with civic involvement. And I was looking actually for something different and unique and perhaps new ideas on that. So I understand that it's, you know, again, that was a great report that I believe Ms. Abrams, Assistant Superintendent Abrams came up with a while ago, but I'm just wondering if we can come up with some new ideas that might be able to help out with that. And I think that's it. Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Martin.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to remind the superintendent, I mean, a big part of the conversations we've been having with the Business Advisory Group were prompted by Mr. Conway's motion. They were prompted by a conversation I know that he had with, I believe, Mr. Martin, Brian Martin, regarding that initial motion of wanting to institute tennis at the Pine, and we talked about then folding it into a larger endeavor of fundraising and developing an institutional development plan for our overall district that would allow us to make those kinds of investments that would allow that kind of a sports-themed thing. I know that Mr. Conway had been very excited about the prospect of expanding it to include, you know, nutrition programming, you know, looking at it in a much larger sense. So I think that that has gotten folded into that endeavor, and I know we're going to be hearing more about it as we move forward, but just I wanted to remind you that that had been something that had been included in that overall work.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Ms. Scott and then Mr. Gignac.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the superintendent. I just have one question before my motion is removed on the curriculum brochures. I just wanted to see the timeline for when those are going to be going out. And also the second part of it was about a curriculum night, because I know there's parents that have questions about the curriculum that would like to attend them. Thank you.
Madam Superintendent?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, I think Ms. Abrams is going to say that they've already gone out. Let's clarify that.
Okay, well, what I can tell you is they're up on the website, but I do have to tell you that they are at the printers. We went through over and over edits and edits, which we had to do. And they were at the printers, and they should be at schools on Monday. But I want to caution, and just so that everyone is aware of this, some of the principals have called me and said that they wanted to hold on to them for parent nights. So they may not necessarily go home right away. That's a process that the principals go through. They like to actually have the parents there with them when they go over the brochures. So that may happen in some schools. I just wanted to let you know. But for the most part, they are up on the website as it stands right now, and they will be out on Monday. And what was your other part? There was another
Curriculum nights.
I'm sorry?
The curriculum nights.
Oh, the curriculum nights, yes, I did speak to all the coordinators about that. Our plan is that by zones, we're going to do curriculum nights, so in literacy and in mathematics to begin with, so that we can be out in the community and explain to parents, as we've had many questions over the past, explain to parents what is happening in mathematics classrooms, what is happening in literacy, so that if parents have questions about how do I do this mathematics with my child, we'll have coordinators and teachers there who will help parents go through the process.
And my only comment on that is I think you'll find that the questions aren't about mathematics or English. The questions that seem to always come up about science and social studies and the allied arts in the schools.
All right, well, we can certainly add science and social studies because you have a lot going on in those areas, but in terms of calls that have come to my office, sometimes it does deal with what is this mathematics curriculum and how do I help my child? So we thought that we would, start with that, but we certainly have a lot that's going to be happening with social studies and with science, and we can share that as well.
And that would be real good information to share. And we also talked about making a video for the
Yes.
new mathematics.
Yep, I
so
did
that
speak
was
to a
another.
couple of coordinators about taking part in that video. So it's something that's in process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Gignac and then Ms. Rossignol.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a few questions regarding some of these motions. First off being my motion to request the superintendent to work with the Lowell High School administration to realign the security guards and resource officers. We brought back a security guard position. I was hoping that the high school would report on what they were going to use that position for. I know I gave what I wanted the position to be used for, but I would like to know what exactly they're using that position for. I'm hoping that they're using it to consistently monitor the surveillance. Like Mr. Conway said, we bring forward these motions hopefully to have something happen about them, and I'm not exactly a motion man. I don't bring motions every other week. So when I do, I do like to see some progress with them. I will continue. The motion I made just a few weeks ago regarding the cash handling policy, I thought that would be a pretty straightforward motion. I thought that would be literally going into a filing cabinet and pulling it out, but I have yet to see that. Also, Mr. Conway's motion is under completed to ask the superintendent to develop strategies and/or programs that will help increase SAT scores. I don't know if that necessarily has happened. I know that there was a report given to us regarding what they're doing to improve SAT scores, but we have yet to see any improvements in those areas. Also, I'm being told that the SAT prep courses at the high school are at the lowest enrollment in a very long time. There at one point, actually last year, there was two English courses and a math, and I'm told that there's 1 and 1 with very low numbers. So we talked about these programs and how important they are and how we need to promote these programs to improve our SAT scores. However, it looks like they're just falling apart. And it's just, now we're talking about data-driven decision-making, and SAT scores are very important to the district. And we need to make sure that we're doing what we can to improve those scores. So I don't know how Mr. Conway feels about this motion, but I wouldn't necessarily consider it as a completed motion. Also, I had a motion on here. Somewhere else. With Mr. Conway regarding the dropout attendance and tardiness. This was reported on in April regarding what they're doing. But in the subcommittee meeting, I did express the fact that I know what's going on, I know what they're doing, and I wanted something new, something that's different to come forward. And we have yet to receive that. I don't know if anybody else has received it, but I have yet to see anything different that they're doing to address the dropout attendance and tardiness. Some will argue that they're bringing in the courses, online courses. However, that has yet to give us any data to prove that is successful in addressing those instances. So I just had a few motions on there that I would like you to look into and hopefully report within the next few meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rossignol.
Actually, I just had a comment in follow-up to Ms. Scott's curriculum brochure inquiry. And Ms. Abrams, you had mentioned that for a number of the schools, the principals are holding on to the curriculum brochures, and the teachers are going to be responsible for distributing them directly to the parents. But my concern on parent nights, my concern with that is, I would hope that for those parents that didn't show or could not appear for parent nights, that those curriculum brochures would go out to them somehow.
Yeah, what I will do to make sure that happens is confer with the principals that are doing it that way and just make sure that they're aware that if the parents aren't there, that they do go home with the student.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further discussion under this report? Entertained to accept this report of progress by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have the Junior National Honor Society. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a response to a motion to ensure that Junior National Honor Society chapters are established in all middle schools. As a result of that motion, we did have a meeting with all middle school principals where we talked about the Junior National Honor Society with the teacher who has been in charge of that at the Stocklosa for a long period of time. Other middle schools had an opportunity to ask questions. They discussed they discussed the possibilities, and there are 3 new schools starting up. There is some funding involved with that, so there's a faculty member is going to be a charter advisor. There will also be a faculty council that has to be agreed upon, and then materials and whatnot. And so that is the process to date on that particular initiative.
Thank you. Ms. Martin and then Ms. Scott.
Thank you very much. I just really wanted to take a quick moment to really thank the leadership, certainly at the Stocklosa, which has led the way in this program, but also to the Butler, Pine, and Robinson Middle Schools, who have all taken it upon themselves to bring this specialized programming to their students at those specific locations. It's one of those programs that's really dependent on faculty and our teaching staff taking on responsibility for it, and I think it certainly speaks well about all of these schools that they're willing to do more to help their students and to honor their students' achievement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
So my only question I had, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, the superintendent, does that make 4 schools total, or are there other schools that are also participating?
According to this particular report, those are 4 schools for national honors. I know there are other honor-type ceremonies that are held at other schools, but I'll ask Ms. Abrams if she has any additional information.
No, just those, it was presented to all principals. These are the 3 new schools that decided to open chapters. And so including the Stocklosa, there's 4 totally that will have a chapter.
I'm sorry, one more question. Is there a way for us to move forward with additional schools? Are we in need of a stipend for the position? I know there's a lot of time involved with tracking the community service hours. I'm just curious if there's a way to move it forward faster.
Well, we did bring principals together and we did talk about it. They had the option to decide if it was something that they could do this year with their school. But we can certainly bring it to the table again and revisit it. And as the other schools join on board and go through the process, it might be helpful if they're able to talk to the other principals and maybe move. So we can do that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? All those, entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have civic involvement. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. This report features the initiatives that have been gone on in the district as far as bringing those standards into fruition. We have adopted the Children Discovering Justice program. That program exists from kindergarten through grade 4, I believe, and they actually have a part where there's litigation. There's cases that kids come forth and bring to all. There are field trips to police departments and whatnot, but in civic, as far as curriculum-wise, we have adopted the Discovering Justice curriculum. Middle school levels, of course, there is civics components covered in the curriculum in grade 8 through U.S. history, where they study the Constitution and the areas of the federal government and whatnot in great detail. We also have a mock trial program. That's at the Robinson and Stocklosa School at this particular time, and they go right to our juvenile court and have mock trial displays in that particular initiative. At Lowell High School, there is a lecture series, James Otis Lecture Series. There is work with the Boston University JFK Library, participate in debate. There is Constitution Day on September 17th at Lowell High School. On January 1st, it's the Emancipation Proclamation 150th anniversary. There are Massachusetts Student Government Day, where Lowell High School students are part of that. And of course, we participate in Law Day across the entire community. All of our middle schools are part of Law Day, Lowell High School also. 10th grade students participate in developing Bill of Rights pamphlet, first 10 amendments. We have a model UN club at Lowell High School. There was a competition at UMass Lowell in that area last year. iCivics. iCivics is a program. We're actually working in collaboration with Judge Blitzman on the iCivics program. And it's professional development training for our teachers. There's a really good curriculum that goes along with that. We're also using that at the Malloy School, incorporating that program into their classrooms. We have a National Student Parent Mock Election Committee. So we're, of course, going to take hold of the election year and whatnot. So we have that going on. We have Voices of Democracy contest. And of course, thank you, National Park. It should be enough that I spoke to this evening. 10th grade students go to the National Park, Concord, Lexington, and they have that goes on every year. And I'd like to thank those who have helped with this report, Michael DiVincenzi at Lowell High School, Martha Cohn, and Rebecca Hyde, who helped with this report.
Thank you. Any discussion on the report? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, second by Ms. Scott. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have list of eligible teachers. Madam Superintendent.
These are everybody who is currently on the eligible teacher list at your monthly report.
Any discussion? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, second by Mr. Leary. Mr. Conway on the motion. Madam Superintendent.
I mean, there's a reason for it, because on the next report I wanted to talk about it, but I'm just wondering if we could put the city of the town on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the personnel report. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, the person.
Mr. Conway.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. When I take a look at Section 4, and it has teachers hired from the September 5th, 2012 list of eligible teachers, I'm just wondering, Madam Superintendent, and I don't know if you can tell me off the top of your head on this. I mean, do we have a lot of teachers from Lowell that apply for these jobs? And the reason why I say that is I looked at it, I guess I was a little bored or something, and I looked at it and I saw that out of 20 of these people that were hired, there's only 3 of them from Lowell. It's like 15%. And I'm saying, we have good people in Lowell and, you know, obviously qualified individuals. And I'm saying, are we advertising enough in the area that we can attract people from the city, or are people from the city just not applying?
Madam Superintendent?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To be honest with you, I do not know the quotient of people who are applying. I am not directly involved in hiring of teachers, but if you want more information, we can seek that out for you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I think the whole, you know, with that last report, if we could find out where these people are coming from that applying for the jobs and wondering whether, I mean, here we have a major university right in our backyard, which I would think there would be a tremendous feeder system. But I would appreciate that information. Thank you, Madam Superintendent.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Rosikowicz, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have home education. Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One parent has requested permission to home educate their child. Gabrielle Kruger wishes to educate her child. If this permission is granted, the total number of families approved by the Lowell School Committee to homeschool will be 22 families, and total number of children will be 42.
Any discussion on this report? Move for approval by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Rosikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have the Commissioner's update on the educator evaluation. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of days ago, the Commissioner gave an update on the newest information as far as educator evaluation goes, and there are a number of initiatives we have to complete as soon as possible. I have a survey that has to be just go through by the 7th that really talks about where we are in the process as far as educator evaluator. It has been recognized that 50 districts have adopted the new evaluation process, which leaves many districts still out there. They're looking for an agreement as soon as we come to that agreement. If there's any differences not adopting, if we adapt, they will have to go through a board at the state. I took it upon myself to visit the person who's in charge of educator evaluation and the Race to the Top pieces, and she said that we were in the same place as many other districts at this particular time. As tomorrow, a group from our administration, as well as union members, are coming together to just look at that language and make sure it's completely as complete as it can possibly be. But we are hoping for completing those negotiations so we can go forward, as you all know. Additionally, we want to look at the retail. The retail initiative is another really very important piece. I'm going to go more into detail that the next meeting because there's all kinds of training that has to come as a result. So my team is really working on the training that happens on the 3 components of adopting the services to English language learners, so we'll talk about that the next time. But these are the most up-to-date timelines as far as educator evaluation goes.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file by Ms. Martin, seconded by Ms. Scott. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have convention and conference requests. Entertain a motion to take both together and approve. Read out both requests. The Lowell High School boys and girls cross-country team members, along with the coaching staff, Phil Meyer, Mary Beth McKenney, Tim Patterson, and Scott Willett, to attend the Manhattan College Invitational held in Yonkers, New York, from Friday, October 12th through Saturday, I assume October 13th, 2012. No substitute teachers are needed. Cost of the trip is approximately $1,000 and will be funded by the Friends of Lowell High School Track and Cross Country Committee. Also on the agenda, Rebecca Hyde, Coordinator of Language and Literacy, grades pre-K through 4, and Deborah Romeo, Coordinator of Language and Literacies, grades 5 through 12, to attend the Literacy for All Conference at Leslie University Center from Monday, November 5th through Tuesday, November 6th, 2012, in Providence, Rhode Island. The cost of the conference is $375 per person and will be paid by the Race to the Top funds. Entertain a motion to accept, approve by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas, approved.
Thank you. Next, we have communications, a motion to accept the gift from the Meehan family and place the donation in the Sullivan Middle School Student Activity Account for use in the Agnes B. Meehan Library Media Center at the Sullivan Middle School. Any discussion? Mr. Conway. Motion to accept by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Roll call, please.
Mr. Gignac?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Ms. Martin?
Yes.
Mayor Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Ross Sikowicz?
Yes.
Ms. Scott?
Yes.
Mr. Conway?
Yes.
7 yeas.
Lastly, we have a thank you note from the family of Edward S. Cooper Sr. for the moment of silence. Motion to accept and place on file by Mr. Conway, seconded by Mr. Gignac. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Entertain a motion to adjourn by Mr. Leary, seconded by Mr. Gignac. Excuse me? We don't have anything else on the agenda, which you need to have an actual item to speak on. Motion was by Mr. Gignac, seconded by Mr. Leary. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, we stand adjourned. Thank you.